The words hit me like a slap to the face. "You're fired, right now." Mr. Matthews, my boss, said them with no hesitation, no remorse. It wasn't a surprise. I knew what I had done. But what I didn't expect was the person who would be sitting in my seat when it all went down. His son, Alex. I had just been handed the worst ultimatum of my career. Give him my $2 million client, or else. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The first time I'd met Alex Matthews, I was a young, hopeful account manager with nothing but ambition and a big dream. He was a senior executive's son, a guy who thought his last name was all the credentials he needed. He had that look, the kind of guy who thought success was a birthright, not a privilege. And when I saw him sitting at my desk that day, with my client's file spread across the table, I knew something was terribly wrong, but I didn't expect it to go this far. The tension in that room was suffocating. Mr. Matthews, the CEO of our firm, was known for his tough stance and no-nonsense attitude. He didn't show emotion, didn't tolerate mistakes, and sure as hell didn't take kindly to disobedience. But today, he was practically seething. And it wasn't just the client, it was me. He wanted me to give away my biggest client to his son, someone who had zero experience handling such a huge account. My $2 million account, the one I fought tooth and nail to land, was now on the table literally, as though it was never mine to begin with. I tried to keep my voice steady, but every word I spoke felt like it could shatter my entire career. "I've worked too hard for this account," I said, trying to reason with him. "I'm not handing it over to Alex." That was my first mistake. Alex's smirk deepened, a kind of smug confidence that made my blood boil. He leaned back in my chair as if he was already taking ownership. Mr. Matthews didn't seem to care. It didn't matter that Alex had barely any experience with major clients. It didn't matter that I had been the one to handle this account from day one, pulling in meetings, negotiating deals, and building a relationship that had taken months to nurture. None of it mattered. And that's when I knew. This was about power. As I stood there, the weight of the situation pressing down on me, my heart raced. Mr. Matthews took a long, deliberate breath, and then turned to me with that cold, business-like expression. "I'm telling you this for your own good," he said. "Hand it over to Alex, or I'll make sure your career here is over." My mind was racing. Could I really refuse? Would I lose everything? In that moment, I knew my life was about to change, whether I liked it or not. And when I said the word no, I had no idea just how much I was about to lose. I could feel the eyes of Mr. Matthews and Alex on me. The silence was almost suffocating. "You're making a huge mistake," Mr. Matthews said, his voice low and dangerous. The weight of his words hung in the air, each syllable a reminder that this was no ordinary request. I wasn't just losing my client. I was challenging my boss, and I had no idea how far he would go to teach me a lesson. One middle. Expand the situation and key relationships. Let me take you back a few months. I had been working tirelessly for the firm, climbing the corporate ladder with every deal I closed, every client I impressed. The $2 million client was my crowning achievement. This wasn't just any account. It was the kind of deal that turned heads, that put you in a different league. My bosses noticed, my colleagues noticed, and hell, even Alex noticed. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was that Alex Matthews had always felt entitled to everything I had worked for. From the very first time I met him, I could see it. He was the kind of guy who believed his last name was his ticket to success. He was entitled, spoiled, and, worst of all, he didn't respect the hard work it took to get where I was. But there I was, staring at him sitting in my chair, unpretending to be the one in control. He was only 26, but I could already see how much influence he had over the company. His dad was the CEO, after all. And it was clear that Mr. Matthews had bigger plans for his son, whether the rest of us liked it or not. Alex had no idea how to manage an account like mine, but none of that seemed to matter to Mr. Matthews. It wasn't about who was qualified, it was about who had power. That realization made my blood run cold. Mr. Matthews wasn't thinking about what was best for the client. He wasn't thinking about what was best for the firm. He was thinking about what was best for his son. I took a deep breath and stared at the papers in front of me. This wasn't just about a business decision anymore. This was about my entire career, my self-respect. one in the years of effort I had put into building something I was proud of. Mr. Matthews, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, I'm not giving up my client. I won't do it. There was a long pause. And then Mr. Matthews' face twisted into something darker, something I'd never seen before. You've crossed a line, he growled. And that was when I realized I wasn't just losing a client. I was about to lose my job. The moment those words left Mr. Matthews' mouth, I felt a chill run down my spine. You've crossed a line. It wasn't just a warning, it was a threat. And the worst part? I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't bluffing. This wasn't going to be just another disagreement that would fade with time. This was a battle, and I had no idea what the outcome would be. I didn't want to back down. I couldn't back down. That $2 million client was the product of years of late nights, personal sacrifices, and grinding through every obstacle to prove I had what it took. To just hand it over to someone who had never even put in half the effort I had? That was a slap in the face, not just to me, but to everything I had worked for. But when I looked at Alex, I saw the smugness in his eyes, the way he leaned back in my chair like he was already entitled to the success I had built. He didn't even have the decency to feel guilty about what he was doing. To him, it was just another game, another way to prove that the Matthews family could get whatever they wanted. Mr. Matthews, on the other hand, wasn't playing. I knew his methods. He didn't care about fairness, and he didn't care about loyalty. He cared about power. And right now, he wanted to prove that he was the one calling the shots. He could see that I was standing my ground, and he didn't like it. The tension in the room thickened. His voice became colder. You think you can just walk in here and make demands? Mr. Matthews barked. You're nothing without this company. You owe everything to me. The words stung. I had worked so hard, but in his eyes, I was still just another employee, a pawn in his game, and it was clear that if I didn't obey, I was going to pay the price. Give him the account, Eliana, Mr. Matthews insisted, or I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. End. Cliffhanger. I stood there, trying to keep my composure, but inside I was falling apart. The future I had worked so hard for was slipping through my fingers, all because of one decision. But I refused to let fear control me. I couldn't back down. I've worked too hard for this, I said, my voice shaking but resolute. I'm not giving it up. Not to him, not to anyone. His expression twisted with fury. You'll regret this, he spat. And then he did something I never thought he would do. He leaned back in his chair, staring at me like I was no longer worth his time. He pointed toward the door. You're fired. I froze. That was it. I had just been fired, and now I had to figure out what to do next. You're fired. The words echoed in my ears, over and over, as if I couldn't quite grasp the reality of what had just happened. I had heard those words before, in movies, in stories, in the lives of people who were just employees. But this wasn't some drama. This was my life. And in that moment, and everything I had worked for, everything I had fought for, felt like it was crumbling away. But as the reality of losing my job sank in, another thought struck me. What would happen to my $2 million client? Mr. Matthews had already made it clear that he wanted Alex to take over. But would the client go along with it? Would they even trust him? Or would they see this for what it was? A blatant power grab. Middle. Consequences begin to unfold. The room was silent for a few seconds, as if the air had been sucked out completely. Mr. Matthews's cold stare never left me, and Alex, still lounging at my desk, seemed to be enjoying the scene. He didn't have to say anything. His smile, smug, knowing, said it all. He was getting what he wanted. I, on the other hand, had just lost everything. But there was no time to wallow in the sting of rejection. None I had to think, and I had to think fast. My mind raced as I calculated my next move. You can't do this, I said, my voice shaking only slightly. You can't just take what's mine without a single thought to the consequences. You're wrong, Mr. Matthews said, his tone growing colder with each word. This is what happens when you don't know your place. Now get out. I stood still, my pulse pounding in my ears. Every muscle in my body screamed for me to walk out, to accept my fate and leave with whatever dignity I had left. But something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to just walk out and let Alex take over what was mine. I had worked too damn hard for this client, this account, and my career. If I wasn't going to fight for it, who would? I turned and walked to the door, my heart racing, but as I reached for the handle, and something caught my attention. Mr. Matthews wasn't finished yet. He leaned forward in his chair, his voice laced with venom. You think you're irreplaceable, Eliana? Let's see how you handle the real world when you have nothing left, when you're nobody. I stopped in my tracks. My blood boiled, but I said nothing. There was nothing more to say. I walked out of that office, and as the door slammed shut behind me, I realized that this wasn't just about losing a job. This was about everything I had worked for, everything I had built for myself. But the question I still couldn't answer was, what would happen to my $2 million client? I had just lost my job, but I hadn't lost everything yet. I still had my skills. I still had my connections. And I still had my client. But I also knew one thing for sure. I was about to face the hardest fight of my life. And I didn't even know where it would lead. After that day, everything changed. I walked out of Mr. Matthews' office without looking back, but the reality of being fired weighed heavily on me. The hardest part wasn't losing the job. It was the uncertainty of what was to come. I had no idea how I was going to recover from this or what my next move would be. But one thing was clear. I couldn't let Alex take my $2 million client. It wasn't just about the money, it was about respect, integrity, and my own sense of self-worth. As soon as I left the office building, I made a call to my client, Mark Reynolds, the CEO of a major tech company. He was someone I had built a strong relationship with over the years, someone who trusted me with his business. And I told him everything about Mr. Matthews, about being fired, and about the offer to give up his account to Alex. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and then Mark said something that surprised me. Eliana, I don't care who your boss is. You're the one who got us this deal, and you're the one I trust. You've earned my loyalty, not your boss's son. If you need a place to land, I've got a position for you at my company. I couldn't believe it. In that moment, everything changed. I wasn't just some employee working under a tyrant. I was someone who had built a reputation on hard work, integrity, and the ability to get things done. And it was those qualities that kept my client loyal to me, not the Matthews name. The relief was overwhelming, and I felt like I had just been handed a second chance, a chance to build something on my own terms. As much as I hated the way Mr. Matthews had treated me, I was grateful for what happened. Losing my job forced me to reassess everything: my career, my values, and my own sense of self-worth. And let me tell you, nothing felt sweeter than knowing that I hadn't been broken by Mr. Matthews' actions. In fact, I was stronger than ever. Losing my job had turned into an unexpected blessing because I was now free from a toxic environment. I had the chance to start fresh, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. As for Mr. Matthews, the fallout didn't take long to hit him. The news of my departure spread quickly, and the company started to feel the ripple effects. Alex, who had been so sure that he could step into my shoes, mine struggled to keep the $2 million client happy. It didn't take long for Mark Reynolds to pull his business from the firm. It was a hard lesson for Mr. Matthews. He had expected that I would fold under pressure, but instead, I walked away and found my worth elsewhere. The company lost not only the client, but also its reputation. Employees began to whisper about how Mr. Matthews had mishandled things and how he had shown no loyalty to the very people who made the business run. End final resolution moment. As for me, I walked into a new office, one where I felt respected and valued. I wasn't just another cog in the machine. I was Eliana Favor, someone who had built her career on her own terms, someone who wasn't afraid to walk away from a toxic situation. Mark Reynolds offered me the chance to lead a new project at his company. It wasn't easy, but it felt like a fresh start. The $2 million client, who was now my responsibility, continued to thrive under my care. And looking back, I realized that being fired was the best thing that could have happened to me. Sometimes, life forces you to make the toughest decisions. And when you do, you realize you're capable of so much more than you ever thought possible. And as for Mr. Matthews and his son Alex, I never heard from them again, but I didn't need their approval. I had my integrity, my clients, and my future ahead of me, and that was more than enough.